Good afternoon, happy Saturday, foodie friends, grain-free VIPs. This is Nina Blake, the grain-free lifestyle coach, coming to you live from my kitchen in Oakdale, Connecticut for today's Slice of the Grain-Free Lifestyle episode. I am so excited about this topic. You picked one of my favorites. This is the topic that helps us go from beginners to bosses in the kitchen. So thank you to everyone who voted for this awesome topic. As you are coming on and being notified that I am here live with you, would you please drop an emoji in the comments or say hello? And if you're catching this on replay, could you please use hashtag replay so that I can make sure to reach out and thank you for being here with me. It means so much to me that you take time out of your weekend, and it's my mission to help families like yours level up your grain-free lifestyle so that you can avoid grains and allergens without sacrificing flavor and variety, and enjoy your favorite foods together again as you live your best lives. So let's dig right into this. Now, full disclosure, I nerd out about this topic, and so to keep myself focused, I have a little list over here. So I'm gonna increase the resolution so I can see this, or maybe not. Nope, it's not happening. So we're going to approach this from 2 points of view. The first point of view that we're going to approach this from, it's things that you can do before you start cooking so that you don't have to troubleshoot. And then after the fact, how can you figure it out? How can you figure out and actually troubleshoot that grain-free recipe gone wrong? So the first thing you're going to want to do is select a recipe from a trusted source. Measure your ingredients ahead of time. Get them all ready so that there's no confusion, right? Know the techniques the recipe uses. And then once you're figuring it out, you're going to want to check the ingredients, the sequence, the techniques used in the recipe, the measurements. And we'll talk more, we'll dive deeply into each one of these in a minute. Other factors, and the last thing I want to tell you as we prepare to jump in, be prepared to discover something new as you troubleshoot, because I can tell you more times than not, I learn something new, and I also break new recipes as I'm troubleshooting a recipe gone wrong. So are you ready to dive into this? Okay, this is one of the most requested topics for a coaching session. And for my VIPs, you know, in the VIP lounge and in coaching sessions, we do a really deep dive into this. So if you have questions about your recipe, we will absolutely do that in our next VIP lounge, which will be on the second Wednesday in March, March 20th at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, or in your coaching session. So let's do this. First, we're going to set ourselves up for success. You want a recipe from a trusted source. Well, what's a trusted source? The most trusted source, of course, is a friend or a family member, right? Now, the next best source is somebody else you can consult. It could be a vetted cookbook, right? That has like a Betty Crocker, for example, something grain-free, right? Has a long background to it. A blog with an author that you are familiar with. I would love to share recipes with you, and that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this, is so we can connect and I can help support you, right? Because when that recipe goes wrong, there will be information there. That recipe developer is going to share it with you. A friend of mine could not get her aunt's recipe right. She couldn't do it, and her mother couldn't do it. And it didn't say in the recipe when to add the salt. So her mother added the salt at the end of the recipe, at the end of the soup, and she would add the salt at the beginning, and it tasted totally different. So being able to consult that source helps us troubleshoot that recipe, right? Measuring your ingredients ahead of time. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you're getting ready to cook, and you get a text, and now you get taken away, and you go, oh, wait a minute. Did I add the baking powder? Now, if you double the baking powder in a recipe, it's going to make a significant difference, right? So if you measure everything ahead of time, you have a much higher possibility of getting that recipe right and not having to troubleshoot, okay? Know the techniques your recipe uses. For the fans of Schitt's Creek out there, you remember the episode where David and Moira are trying to fold in the cheese and neither one of them knows what fold in the cheese means, right? And of course, David looks it up and he goes, "Oh, it means to gently stir." And this is after they've each had a meltdown, right? So definitely know what the techniques are ahead of time and make sure you feel confident in doing that ahead of time. Now, you can be the best chef in the world and you will have to troubleshoot. It happens to everybody. And before we start this next phase, I want to make sure that you understand that troubleshooting a recipe gone wrong does not mean there is something wrong with your cooking. Rather, it is a testament to your commitment to your health, your family, and your desire to get it right. So please don't think that there's anything wrong with you, okay? When we dive into this next piece, as much as I don't want to be egotistical, I'm going to tell you only about myself because I don't feel comfortable sharing other people's mistakes. If I'm going to talk about mistakes, I'm going to tell you about mine. So, ingredients, the brand or the state of the ingredient. What do I mean? Well, let's forget about grain-free cooking for a minute. If you have ever tried to make cookies with melted butter versus softened butter, it's a huge difference. When you make that cookie with melted butter, sure, the batter is easy to stir, but the result is you get this flat, crispy cookie. It's not chewy, it's not, doesn't have a cookie texture. You can eat it, but it's more likely to burn, and it just doesn't have that bakery cookie appearance, flavor, and texture that you're going for. So that's what I mean when I say ingredients, okay? The brand of the ingredients, the state of the ingredient, and sometimes just trying something new, going back to the recipe, reading it carefully. If it's a blog post, read the FAQ, read the blogger's personal story about what they did. If not, put a question there, reach out and ask for help. People are here to help you. I love helping people troubleshoot their recipes because that means more people are eating safely and adding their favorite foods to their table. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can use the link to a call in the comments and we can see if I'm a good fit to support you. So, sequence, again with the cookies. Let's see. When you are making cookies, if you're making my iced lemonade cookies, if you are making my chocolate chip cookies, if you, why can't I think of another, if you're making my snickerdoodle cookies, the sequence that you do things in matters. So for example, my chocolate chip cookies, right? Everyone who's a professional has politely said, "Nina, chickpea flour isn't a wet ingredient." Thank you very much, you're correct, but it's taking the place of eggs. And therefore, I add chickpea flour with the wet ingredients because it's taking the place of eggs. It needs to function like eggs. And if you're like, "Nina, I can't do chickpea flour." Right now, I'm abstaining from lectin, well, I'm abstaining from chickpea, and I'm using an egg replacer with my VIPs, and let me tell you, it's absolutely amazing. I use it in my last cookie bars. Phenomenal. I'm going to be teaching that class in a few weeks, so put cookie bars in the chat if you want to know more about that. So getting back to the cookies, the sequence in which you do things matters. What do I mean? If you go to make my chocolate chip cookie recipe, when I go to make it, as I told you, I was only going to talk about myself. You start with the creamed or melted coconut oil. Then you add the sugars. And before you add the coconut milk, you add the chickpea flour. Why? Because the chickpea flour binds with the softened coconut oil and it binds with the sugars. And it keeps the coconut oil from separating or hardening up when you add the cold coconut milk. So in that case, the sequence that you add your ingredients matters. If you add the cold coconut milk before you add the chickpea flour, all of a sudden the coconut oil congeals And then what are you supposed to do? You can absolutely heat it up, but if you just keep on cooking, you're not going to get cookies. So that sequence matters. Okay? Next, technique. I wish all the techniques from traditional cooking worked. I wish it did. I wish they did. But maybe you're like me, because I found out when I was avoiding grains and allergens, I felt like I had been transported to another planet where none of the rules of cooking applied, and it was like gravity was different. And so that's what I mean when I say technique matters. Oh, I didn't put equipment on here. We need to add equipment. Let's do this. Okay, I have the equipment to show you, but let's keep talking technique. For example, when you cream sugar and butter for, when you cream sugar and coconut oil for a cookie, it's very different than when you cream sugar or confectioner's sugar and coconut oil for a frosting. The way you do that is quite different. Yes, it's the same process, but you won't get the same result. So when you cream your coconut oil, your coconut milk, and your dry sugars, you get a nice creamed appearance. But when you cream the softened coconut oil and the confectioner's sugar, because the confectioner's sugar is a different ingredient, it will trap air very differently. And that's what you want, right? So let's take another technique, for example, developing xanthan gum. We never have to worry about this when we are making a traditional recipe. It's no big deal. But when we're making a grain-free recipe that needs to hold air, waffles, pancakes, muffins, breads, cookies, cakes, even pie crust, it has to hold air to make that flakiness, right? Just a little bit, but it matters. If it is not developed enough, then you don't get bread, you get a brick. And we don't want that. We want bread. So that technique of developing xanthan gum is essential to having your recipe go right. And if you're looking for support with this, I want to help you. Use the link in the comments so that we can schedule a no-cost consult and talk about how I can support you. Equipment. Two different mixers, both made by KitchenAid. Both of them are KitchenAid mixers. This was my tried and true KitchenAid mixer. This is the dough spiral. I did not know there was a difference. I just ordered a second mixer because I kept blowing up or smoking the hand mixers. I have smoked 3 to date. It did take me probably 7 years to smoke 3 mixers, but that's way above average. So I'm not allowed to use the hand mixer anymore unless it's for a sauce or like a pancake batter. So I bought the classic Artisan Mini to replace the hand mixer. So this was the dough hook, and I was like, whatever, smaller mixer, no big deal. So I go to make my bread recipe. I go to make my chia bread. Now, I developed this recipe. I know this recipe inside and out. I could write it down, from memory. I know this recipe. But I was using a different piece of equipment. And what I learned after my bread flopped was that this is called a dough hook and this is called a dough spiral. However, in the manual, they're both referred to as a dough hook. I had to do some research to figure out this was a spiral and this was a hook, was that this takes longer. Again, like I said to you at the beginning, there wasn't anything wrong with me. I just needed to learn something, and there's nothing wrong with you as you learn to troubleshoot. As far as I know, there is not a cooking school where they teach chefs to do this, because if there were, I would enroll. Let me tell you, I would have saved myself a lot of headache, I would have saved myself a lot of aggravation, because it's taken me, I'm in year 12 of living my grain-free, allergy-friendly lifestyle, and I don't want it to take you a decade to do this. And that's why I've created my program, Grain-Free Fast Track, to help you accelerate your journey so that in 12 weeks, you can learn what I learned in my first 10 years of the grain-free lifestyle. So if you'd like to know more about that, put Fast Track in the comments and I will reach out to you and get you the inside scoop on that life-changing program. Now, we talked about equipment. Measurement. What do you mean measurement, Nina? There can't be anything to do with measurement. I measured. Well, some people, when they measure, pack the ingredients into the cup. Other people, when they measure, dip. But the standard way to measure that recipe developers use is they scoop into the measuring cup, they level off the top. If you try an experiment and you pack flour into a cup and you weigh it, and you dip flour and you weigh it, and then you scoop flour, level it off, and then you weigh it, you will get 3 drastically different measurements. You can also use a kitchen scale and check and see after you measure your flour into the cup, scooping it into the cup, leveling it off the top, measure, take that weight and use that. I use 100 grams of my grain-free flour blend and my lectin-free flour blend as my standard 1 cup measure. Makes my life so much easier, okay? So settling of ingredients it's a reality. When I measure, even when I take a batch of grain-free flour that's already been mixed up, I still give it a good toss because ingredients settle, and having a little bit of aeration will give you a better recipe. Now, there are other factors. What do I mean? I mean environmental factors. I mean altitude. I mean, I have 2 ovens. So in my stove here, I notice a vast difference in my bread if I am baking something in the bottom oven and baking bread in the top oven. Other factors could be the humidity of your kitchen. If you've ever worked in a professional kitchen, you notice what happens. They go in and right away, what do? They turn on the ovens before they even put down their handbag. The ovens are on. They want to get every possible inch of those ovens to the hottest temperature possible, right? Because an oven that is underheated, right, it doesn't bake well, but a room that is underheated will give you a different result. I get different cookies in the summer than I do in the winter. The environment is different. If the AC is on, I will get a different cookie than if the AC is off. It's just an additional factor. Now, you ready to talk about the way I've messed up in the past? Because this is the big deal. This is the big deal. Be prepared to discover something new. When I thought about all the new recipes that I have discovered from troubleshooting or from just making do with a recipe that has gone wrong, what came to mind immediately was my sour cream, my lazy French toast, porridge, and a ricotta cheese. And these were just 4 off the top of my head, okay? When I was making my sour cream, I was trying to go for a cream cheese. I didn't get it right the first time, but I was able, because I was writing everything down, I was able to troubleshoot it, get the cream cheese that I want, and then go back and be like, wow, I accidentally got a sour cream. That's pretty cool. Same thing with my lazy French toast. I was working on a new bread recipe. Apparently I hadn't developed the xanthan gum right, whatever. And I had a flop. So I sliced it up. I needed to make something with it. Okay, let me put all the ingredients for French toast in this casserole, pop it in the oven. Amazing, spectacular. It was a great recipe that I still enjoy to this day, okay? Most recently, probably since December, my porridge recipe and my ricotta cheese recipe. I was trying to make an egg replacer when I made my porridge recipe. Yep, the egg replacer flopped. I am not too proud to say the egg replacer flopped. I'm still working on it. I'm going to get it because I'm going to keep going through the steps, and I'm going to use what I know to get a stovetop egg with the appearance, flavor, and texture of eggs. It's just going to take me time. We level up our grain-free lifestyle one recipe at a time, just like I always tell you. But I got a porridge recipe. That's pretty cool. Now we can have a quick breakfast. My husband enjoys it, and it's nice to have another recipe. Even if it's not my favorite, it's pretty good. And a ricotta cheese. You might call it ricotta cheese, R-I-C-O-T-T-A. Growing up, we always called it ricotta cheese. Well, I thought ricotta cheese was off the menu for me forever. I was trying to make a lectin-free cream cheese, and it didn't go right the first time. So I used what I know to change the texture. But because I wrote everything down, I have that lectin-free ricotta cheese recipe. And I am going to get lasagna back on my menu again. I will absolutely do that because one recipe at a time, right? I got the pasta, I need to test that, and then we'll go for some lasagna sheets. One recipe at a time. So let's go over how to troubleshoot a grain-free recipe gone wrong. First, you want to set yourself up for success. You want to select a recipe from a trusted source. Measure all your ingredients ahead of time. Know the techniques that your recipe uses, otherwise you'll end up like Moira and David, and we love them, but you don't want to be in that situation. You want to get food. It happens. Everybody gets a recipe that doesn't go right, and so on the back end, you've got to engage that brain and figure it out. So, for example, why is your bread doughy? Right? So you're going to look at the ingredients, the brand or the state of the ingredient. And what I mean by the state of the ingredient is how old is your baking soda, for example. Old baking soda could absolutely cause your bread to become too doughy, right? The sequence, the order in which you do the steps. If you, for example, add the leavening agents too early, you're going to get a brick. Figured that one out myself, done it so many times. It happens, right? You keep cooking, okay? The techniques: searing, folding, whipping, creaming, replacing eggs, developing xanthan gum. All of those are techniques that if you tweak them a little bit, makes a monumental difference in your recipe. Measuring. And of course, equipment. Okay? Other factors like the environment, and be prepared to discover something new. All right, friends, I love you. It's been great being with you here. If you'd like more information about how to level up your grain-free lifestyle or my new program, Grain-Free Fast Track, use the link to schedule a no-cost consult or put Fast Track in the comments so that I can help you level up your grain-free lifestyle and learn what I've developed in 10 years in only 12 weeks. I love you. Have an amazing day. The possibilities are endless when you break a recipe.